The Texas Panhandle wind always carried grit, real, sandpaper grit, that got under your contacts and between your teeth. That afternoon, it was kicking up dust devils near the old Dairy Queen off Route 60, the one with the busted neon Y in Dairy. I parked my rusting '96 Ford Ranger in the shade of a leaning power pole, left the engine running, and watched the sun refract off the windshield like it had something to prove. She was already inside. Rachel. I hadn't seen her in 8 years. We used to come here all the time back in high school, before everything spun out, before I enlisted, before she got married, before we stopped calling. I hadn't planned on ever seeing her again. That wasn't drama talking. It was just self-preservation. But then her mom died, and in a town like Canyon, Texas, that kind of thing drags everyone out of the crevices. I got the invite in the weirdest way, through her brother Mason, who I hadn't spoken to since prom night when I socked him in the gut for calling me Trailer Phil. He'd shown up at my dad's shop, eyes heavy with whatever Rachel had dumped on him, handed me a funeral program like it was a summons. So here I was. The bell above the door jangled when I stepped in. The scent of fryer grease, mixed with old vanilla, soft serve, curled in my nose. Rachel was at the corner booth, same one we used to claim, back against the window, overlooking the scrub and mesquite that ran behind the building. She looked up. Her face was older, but not in a bad way. She wore years like people wear denim in Amarillo, broken in, honest. "Hey, Eli," she said, voice low, eyes unreadable. "Hey, Rach." I sat. The cracked vinyl bench hissed beneath me. For a second, it felt like nothing had changed, like I could still see our initials scratched into the wood under the table. "You still drink Dr. Pepper with a lime wedge?" she asked, one brow raised. "Always." She nodded, flagged the teenager behind the counter. We sat there in silence while he poured from the fountain, and I studied her. Her nails were shorter now. Her wedding ring, gone. The drinks came. Condensation immediately started trailing down the plastic. "You look good," I offered. "Don't lie. You look like hell." She grinned, just barely. We sipped. Then she said it, just blurted it out like it was nothing. "I left him 2 months ago." I didn't answer. My brain was still stuck on the white line where her ring used to be. "I found texts," she continued, "with someone from Odessa. He said it was just talk, but, you know." I did know. I knew the exact shade of betrayal in her voice. I'd heard it in my mom's throat before she vanished down I-27 and never came back. "He stopped remembering things," she said. "Little stuff. My birthday." "Sounds familiar," I muttered. "My CO in Afghanistan couldn't remember my name half the time, but he always knew who brought him chewing tobacco." She gave me a sideways look. "You're comparing my marriage to the army?" I shrugged. "At least in the army, betrayal gets documented." That cracked something. She laughed, short and bitter, but real. Her hands wrapped around the cup, knuckles pale. "I thought maybe," she trailed off. I leaned forward, arms on the table. "Thought maybe what?" "I don't know. That we could talk. That you wouldn't hate me." "Hate you?" I echoed. She looked me straight in the face now, and I felt the room drop a few degrees. "You stopped writing, Eli. No more calls. You disappeared." "I had to," I said, voice low. I knew if I didn't, I'd never stop waiting. "For what?" "For you to pick me over him." The DQS AC clicked off, leaving the buzzing of the overhead lights and the faint scratch of country radio from the back room. George Strait, maybe. Something about Amarillo and angels. She didn't respond, just stared at her soda, like the carbonation might spell out a better answer. I reached under the table, ran my fingers over the wood. The letters were still there, or more. I'd carved it with my pocket knife the night before graduation. She kissed me for the first time not 5 minutes after. Symbolic objects always outlive the people who give them meaning. Her phone vibrated against the formica. A name popped up. Aaron. "Is that—" She silenced it without answering. We didn't finish our drinks. When we walked outside, the sun had dipped low enough to set the sky on fire, all sherbet and dust. "You still drive that truck?" she asked, pointing. "Runs like a dying pig, but yeah." We stood there too long and she shifted awkwardly. I'm headed back to Lubbock tonight. You staying with Mason? She shook her head. No, motel near I-27. Another pause. Then, soft. Come see me. And before I could answer, she was in her car, tires crunching gravel. I leaned against the Ranger and stared out toward the horizon, where the wind scattered dust like memory. The letters under the table had meant one thing back then. Now? I wasn't sure. But something was unraveling. Or maybe reweaving. Hard to tell in the wind. 2 hours later, I found myself parked outside the Lubbock Plaza Inn, a squat, sun-bleached building with faded maroon trim and a half-lit vacancy sign that flickered like it couldn't make up its mind. The cicadas were screaming in the trees near the chain-link fence, their buzz sensing with the low hum of a transformer overhead. I hadn't planned on coming. I'd gone home to the trailer, still on blocks, still with the busted screen door, and tried to pretend Rachel hadn't said come see me. I'd cooked a half-assed dinner, cracked a shiner, and sat on the back step with the bottle sweating between my knees. But my head wouldn't shut up. Her voice looped like static. That motel invitation kept blooming in my brain like mesquite roots under pavement, slow, inevitable, breaking everything beneath. So, here I was. I killed the engine and just sat for a while, the smell of hot oil and creosote thick in the air. The neon buzz mixed with the summer night's damp weight. Across the lot, a man in socks and no shoes was leaning against the ice machine, smoking a menthol like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I gave him a nod. He didn't nod back. Rachel was in room 203. She'd texted me the number around 8:40. Just the digits, no words. No punctuation. That silence spoke volumes. I climbed the stairs slowly, boots thudding against the metal risers. My hands were sweaty, so I wiped them on my jeans, thrift store levies I'd owned since before deployment. They were a size too big now. When I knocked, I expected hesitation. Instead, the door opened almost immediately. Rachel was barefoot, wearing a faded hoodie and cotton shorts. Her hair was pulled up in a messy knot, the kind that looks accidental but isn't. The TV behind her was muted, flickering images of a crime drama no one was watching. You came, she said. I'm here, I answered, because I didn't know how to say I never left. Inside, the room smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly floral. Maybe her shampoo. The AC unit groaned against the window, shooting out barely cool air. She sat on the edge of the bed and tucked one foot under her. I ordered tacos, she said, like it was something casual people said after 8 years of silence. I nodded. I could eat. We didn't say much until the tacos came, a brown paper sack delivered by a teenager who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. We sat cross-legged on the bed, eating off napkins and sipping generic soda from wax cups. You ever think about it? She asked after a while. About what? Us, if things had been different. I took a bite, chewed slowly. I think about it all the time. She watched me, her taco forgotten in her hand. Do you hate me? Oh, try D.D. Not even for marrying him? I hesitated. I hated myself more. Her brow furrowed. Why? Because I never told you not to. She flinched like I'd slapped her. But I didn't regret saying it. You remember the concert? I asked. What, the one in Amarillo, senior year? Yeah, that night I was going to tell you. She looked away. You held my hand. And then you let go. The silence between us was a second heart, beating loud and fast. She picked at her napkin, folding the corner over and over. I thought you were too good for me, she said suddenly. You were going somewhere. I was just Canyon. You weren't just anything. Her eyes flicked to mine. That's not what I believed back then. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. The guy with the menthol was gone. A couple argued near a pickup with a busted tail light, their voices muffled but tense. I'm not the same, I said. War changes people, not just the shooting part. It's the waiting, the forgetting. Coming back and finding everything's moved an inch to the left. Rachel came up behind me. I felt her before she touched me. I still wear that necklace, she said. The one you gave me. Little silver gear. Nim. From the junkyard in Pampa, I said, smiling despite myself. It's in my glove box now. I took it off when he started asking questions. I turned to face her. Her eyes were shining, but she didn't cry. Rachel never cried when it mattered. Only after. Only alone. I wanted to kiss her, but I didn't. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out something small. A bent penny. 2007. We used to toss them into the Dairy Queen lot and make dumb wishes. This yours? I asked. She laughed softly. Where'd you find it? Floorboard of the Ranger. She cupped her hands and I dropped it in. Our fingers touched. That old coin might have meant nothing to anyone else, but it still held something. Not luck. Not even memory. Just proof. You staying the night? She asked. I shook my head. Not tonight. Tomorrow? I don't know. And I meant it. Because there was a canyon inside me now, wide and echoing. And Rachel was standing on the other side, holding a map written in a language I'd forgotten how to read. She walked me to the door. I paused with my hand on the knob. I'm glad you came, she said again. I never really left. And then I stepped back into the Texas night, the heat still clinging to my skin like regret. 6 months passed. The gear necklace showed up in my mailbox on a Thursday, wrapped in an old napkin from the Dairy Queen with "Take care of this" for me scribbled in blue ink across the fold. No return address, but I didn't need one. I knew her handwriting like I knew the knots in the pine paneling of my dad's workshop, by heart, and with some kind of ache. I stared at that note for a good 10 minutes, sitting on the steps outside my trailer while the winter wind came sweeping down from the caprock. It wasn't the polite kind of chill that nudged you indoors. It was raw, the kind that slapped your ears and made the joints in your hands burn. My coffee went cold while I read and reread those 6 words, wondering what they meant. I hadn't seen Rachel since that night at the Plaza Inn. I'd thought about going back. Hell, I'd wanted to. But I never did. Instead, we fell into this weird limbo. Occasional texts, short calls, always circling, but never landing. Her voice came through the speaker like a scratched vinyl, familiar and flawed. She was in Austin now. Said she needed to be somewhere that didn't remind her of him. She got a job at a dog rescue near South Congress and rented a 1-bedroom apartment above a tattoo parlor. I imagined her walking past the food trucks and record shops, her hair catching the hill country sun, her boots kicking up cedar pollen. Meanwhile, I stayed put. I worked the front desk at Dad's mechanic shop most days and picked up side gigs fixing lawnmowers or gutting out old carburetors for the ranchers who still believed in them. I could have left. Could be followed her. But Canyon, in its dusty stubbornness, still had a hold on me. The necklace weighed heavy in my hand. I rubbed the edge with my thumb, feeling the tiny etching of a gear tooth worn smooth from years of wear. That necklace had once been a joke, a salvaged piece from a broken combine weed found behind her uncle's farm. But like most things with Rachel, it had gathered meaning without either of us trying. That night I drove to Palo Duro Canyon. There's something about that place in winter. Bare rock against cloudless sky, the hush of emptiness echoing between cliffs. I hiked the upper rim, boots crunching through frost, breath fogging in front of me. I took the necklace and buried it beneath a flat stone where we'd once carved our names in the dirt with sticks. I didn't cry. I didn't have to. That Saturday, Mason stopped by the shop. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. He looked older now, like a man who'd watched too many people walk away. She's coming back next week, he said, nodding toward my open toolbox. To visit. I didn't look up. Why are you telling me? Because she asked me not to. He set a bag of tacos on the counter, same kind Rachel and I used to get in Lubbock, and left without another word. The following Wednesday, I saw her again. Not in some grand movie scene way. No rainstorm, no slow-motion hug. She just walked into the shop while I was under the hood of a Chevy Suburban that hadn't run since Bush was president. I heard the bell jangle, then her voice, light but clipped. You ever gonna change that stupid sign out front? I popped my head up, grease on my hands, hair matted from the heat lamp. It's vintage. She smiled. It's missing 3 letters. I wiped my hands and came around the car. We stood there, 2 feet apart, under the humming fluorescence, surrounded by the smell of brake fluid and old rubber. You look different, I said. Better or worse? Different. She held up a paper bag. Brought collages. From the check, stop off 35, figured you wouldn't be eating real breakfast. I took the bag. Thanks. We sat on the shop's front stoop, same place I used to sit with my dad back before he moved to a VF facility near San Angelo. The sky was that West Texas pale blue, the kind that fades to white near the edges. We didn't say much, just passed the pastries back and forth and listened to the wind whip through the dry grass. She pulled out a photograph halfway through. Folded, dog-eared. It was us, 17, standing next to her uncle's beat-up Jeep, my arm around her shoulders. Her hair was braided. I was wearing a gas station t-shirt. Found this in a box I hadn't opened since I left Canyon, she said. I studied it for a second. I miss that version of us. I miss how easy it was to believe we'd never screw it up. A pause. Then, what if we didn't? I looked at her, really looked. There were new lines around her eyes, but her smile hadn't changed. Still half sun, half mischief. Do you want to try again? I asked, the words tasting like cedar smoke and memory. She didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and held out the matching penny from our Dairy Queen nights. The one I thought she'd tossed years ago. She said, "It's not about luck, Eli. It's about whether we believe in what we bury." And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the past was a weight strapped to my chest. I felt like maybe, just maybe, it could be a bridge. Even in Texas, things buried in red dirt have a way of surfacing again. The thing about trying again is, it's not like flipping a switch. It's more like rewiring a whole damn house while it's still got electricity running through the walls. Rachel moved back to Canyon in late March, just as the mesquite trees were starting to bloom. She took a job teaching art at the middle school, the same one we went to when we still thought kissing was gross and summers were forever. She rented a duplex off 6th Avenue near the Sonic, a squat little place with green shutters and cracked concrete out front. I helped her carry in boxes and she let me fix her leaking sink even though I told her it'd be cheaper to call someone else. We didn't call it dating, not out loud. It was softer than that. Slower. She'd bring me collages on Fridays. I'd bring her coffee before staff meetings, black with 2 raw sugars, no lid, just like she used to like it before he started buying her caramel lattes instead. We didn't say much about him. I never asked, and she never offered, though I sometimes caught her thumbing her bare ring finger like it itched with memory. The penny and the gear necklace lived together now, tucked into a small bowl on her windowsill. A new kind of shrine. I didn't ask her why she kept them out in the open. I think maybe it was her way of making sure neither of us forgot what we'd come back from. One night, early May, we drove out to Buffalo Lake. It's not much of a lake anymore. More a patchy reservoir ringed with dry reeds and rusted signs warning about bacteria levels. But it was quiet, and you could still see the stars like pinholes punched in a dark tin roof. We sat in the bed of my Ranger, backs against the cab, the old plaid blanket from high school between us. She passed me a warm can of Lone Star and pointed at the sky. "That one," she said, tapping the air. "Orion. I used to think his belt was a spaceship." "You did not." "Did too. Told everyone I was going to hitch a ride and leave Canyon behind." "You kinda did, though." She went quiet for a second. "Yeah, and then I came back." I sipped my beer. The metallic tang mixed with the dust in the air. I could smell her shampoo, coconut and something herbal, and it hit me harder than the alcohol. "You regret it?" I asked. "Leaving? Coming back?" She thought on it. "I regret not saying goodbye right the first time." Her voice didn't crack, but my chest did. "I kept waiting for you to tell me to stay," she said. "But you didn't." "I was 19, Raj. I barely knew how to tie my own tie." Can't she?" She laughed. "You still can't." We fell into a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. Just full. Like a room with all the lights turned off, but someone you trust sitting beside you. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I froze. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did, and that scared the hell out of me. I'd spent so long walling that part of myself off, I wasn't sure how to open it again without everything flooding. You know what I remember most? She whispered. What? That night we skipped prom and drove to Amarillo for donuts. I grinned. Golden Light Cafe. You wore that dumb jacket with the fringe. No, you loved that jacket. I loved the person wearing it. She looked up, and this time I let myself look back. Really look. I'm scared, I admitted. Of what? That we're just reliving a memory. That this isn't real, just two ghosts playing house in a town that never changed. She didn't respond at first. Just pulled her knees up, rested her chin. You're not a ghost, Eli. You're just someone who stopped believing the future could hold good things. Can you blame me? She shook her head. No, but I'm still here. I touched the side of her face, fingers grazing her jaw like the edge of a prayer. I'm trying, I said. I know. We didn't kiss that night. Not yet. But when we climbed into the cab to drive back, she reached across and put her hand on my knee. A small thing, but it was more than enough. Over the next few weeks, we settled into a rhythm. Sunday mornings at her place with pancakes and Patsy Cline on vinyl. Late night drives with no destination, just wind and headlights and unfinished conversations. Once I caught her watching me fix the back porch light with this soft, almost bewildered expression. What? I asked. She shrugged. I just forgot how safe you always made me feel. I swallowed hard. That's a dangerous thing to say. Why? Because I'd do anything to keep that feeling alive. And I meant it. Even when the past hovered like a dust storm just outside town, waiting for the right moment to roll in. Because sometimes, safety isn't the absence of danger. Sometimes it's just knowing that when the storm hits, someone's gonna stay. And for the first time in a decade, I believed maybe I would. The tornado sirens started wailing just after 3:00 p.m. on a Thursday in late June, the kind of Texas summer day when the humidity turns your shirt into a second skin and the clouds roll in like bruises across the sky. Rachel was still at the middle school, wrapping up her summer mural project with a few 8th graders who'd stuck around for extra credit. I was underneath an F-250 with a rusted-out transmission when the power flickered, once, then twice, before the radio cut to static and the ceiling lights blinked out. Outside, the wind had changed, fast, heavy, sharp-edged. In the panhandle, you learned to listen to the wind. I climbed out from under the truck and reached for my phone. No bars. No data. The landline was down too, which told me all I needed to know. It was real, and it was close. The old gut instinct kicked in. Years of deployment had trained me to read tension in the air. This wasn't just a drill. I jumped into the Ranger and floored it down 23rd, tires screeching on the gravel shoulder. The sky had gone green, gray, and ugly, that specific Texas color that looks like God left a bruise on the world. A sheet of dust blew sideways across the road, and somewhere in the distance, I could already hear that low, unholy freight train rumble that meant it was bearing down. When I skidded into the school parking lot, it was nearly empty. Rachel's Jeep was still there. I didn't even knock, just barreled through the front doors, calling her name. In here! Her voice echoed from the art room. I found her and the kids huddled in the hallway, away from the windows, holding canvas tote bags over their heads like that would do anything. One girl was crying. Another had earbuds in, staring at the floor. Rachel was calm. Focused. The kind of calm that makes your chest ache. We're going to the boiler room, she said when she saw me. You okay? I am now, I said, and I meant it. We herded the kids down the stairwell as the lights flickered again, and I felt the floor tremble slightly beneath my boots. The sirens were still wailing outside, relentless, alive. In the boiler room, it was damp and cold. Pipes hissed overhead. One of the boys asked if he was going to die. No, kid, I said, kneeling next to him. Not today. Rachel crouched across from me, hands steady on her knees. Our eyes met. There was no fear in hers. Just something deeper. Trust, maybe. Or surrender. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The storm moved through fast, like they always do. Loud, brutal, and brief. By the time we emerged, the sky had cracked open to blue, and the air smelled like wet asphalt and ozone. The kids were shaken but fine. Parents trickled in one by one, and we stood on the front steps watching the aftermath. A tree had split clean down the middle in front of the field house. Someone's sedan had a mailbox embedded in its windshield. "You've got a cut," she said, reaching for my temple. I hadn't noticed. A shallow scrape, probably from the door frame. "You always know," I said quietly. She smiled, brushing hair off my forehead. "You've always been easy to read." We walked home together that evening, hand in hand down streets littered with twigs and gravel and soaked paper flyers. No power in most of the houses, but someone had a battery-powered radio playing Old Willie Nelson on their porch, and we paused to listen for a second. It felt like something out of a memory I hadn't lived yet. At her duplex, we sat on the floor by candlelight, the air heavy with the storm's aftermath. She wrapped a wet washcloth around my scrape while I nursed a beer gone warm. "You scared me today," she whispered. "May?" I chuckled. "You were the one running point on a bunch of 8th graders while the sky tried to murder us. I meant when I thought maybe you weren't coming." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the penny. Still, carried it, always. Flipped it over in my fingers, smooth and familiar. "I'll always come," I said. "Even if it takes me a while to figure out how." She stared at it. "You know, I was thinking earlier, maybe we should put these in the ground." "What, bury them again?" "No," she said. "Plant them." I raised an eyebrow. "Like a time capsule," she continued. "Something to mark this, not who we used to be, but who we're choosing to be now." I didn't respond. Just stood, walked out onto her porch, and looked up at the clear, ink-black sky. No clouds. No sirens. Just stars, bright, stubborn, and whole. She followed, wrapping a blanket around both of us. We stood like that, swaying slightly, breathing in the quiet. And then, finally, I turned to her. "I never stopped loving you, Rachel." She blinked, and I saw it all cross her face at once. Surprise, relief, guilt, joy. "I know," she said. "I think that's what scared me the most." I kissed her, soft and slow like forgiveness. We didn't talk about the future that night. We didn't need to. It was written already, in a bent penny, a junkyard necklace, a hallway full of scared kids, and a Texas storm we outran together. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was enough. The end.